Good morning, class. Today we are starting a new unit of study that we'll probably do 1 or 2 times per week, and that unit is poetry, one of my favorite topics, and I will show you why. First off, I want to talk a little bit about reviewing the Cardinal Way. These are things that we reviewed at the beginning of the school year. We made skits. We had fun with it. Let's beginning of third trimester push off on a positive note of reminder what class expectations are. And of course, if I'm ever gone and I need to get a substitute, please treat them with even more respect than you would treat me, because they are guests in our classroom. Help them out, and let them know that if they don't have all the information they need, you guys can help them with it because you've been in the class for 2 trimesters and you know my routines pretty well. All right, so the Cardinal Way, I do want to focus today on transitions. Transitions follow directions quickly and quietly, and the first time. So if you say something like, "Oh, I didn't hear you," I'd like to focus a lot on you just trying hard to, when I'm talking to the class as a whole and listening to it so you can hear the first time. Now, our poetry unit. Today you're going to read the slides, complete the notes, and then read a poem called The Worst Day Ever. And then you're going to be able to write your own poem today as well. If there's time at the end, you will read. Today is a snap schedule. You will be done at the same time as yesterday, which is 11:50. No, 10:59. 10:59. Please be seated at your table until 10:59 when I will dismiss you. All right, here are some essential questions for this unit. Number 1, how do poets express themselves and the world effectively? 2, how do I best convey feelings and information through words? 3, how and why should I use figurative and or descriptive language in my own writing? And 4, how does listening to poems and verbally expressing poetry help in my understanding of the poem? These are all things we are going to go over in the unit, and you will get a chance to be able to correctly answer all of those questions by the end of the unit, which will end before your the MCA testing. Poetry. Poetry is not only really helpful for your MCA tests, but it is a noun. A noun, and it means literary work in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings and ideas by the use of distinct style and rhythm. Poems collectively or as a genre of literature. Rhythm. Keep that in mind as we go through this unit. Examples of poetry. My favorite author, Shel Silverstein, he writes these poem books. Where the Sidewalk Ends was one of my favorite. I remember my first grade teacher reading over and over the poem Sick by Shel Silverstein, still one of my favorites. My buddy William Shakespeare, he writes all of his writing in a poetic way and a rhythm and rhyme. It's beautiful. Here is a book that is written through poetry. Here is a classic poem by Robert Frost. Robert Frost is one of the most popular poets of all time, and it is a name that you will hear over and over again through the years up until college and beyond. And of course, music. Music is poetry. So if you say you don't like poetry, you're saying you don't like music. So those two go hand in hand. Look at some of your favorite singers, songwriters. They are writing poetry and putting music to it. How do you feel about poetry? I want you to think about that. You'll be writing in your notebooks. The paragraph, I'm going to read it to you. Please follow along in your slides. Poetry is a form of expression, just as music, painting, sculpture, and dance are. Poetry is different from these other forms of expression because it is composed only of words. Poets must give the same careful attention to words that composers give to melody, that painters give to color, that sculptors give to shape, and that dancers give to movement. Poetry demands skill. While we admire poets for the beauty of their thoughts and the generosity of their feelings, we have to remember that these virtues do not by themselves make poems. Only words make poems. The best poets are not necessarily those who are most intelligent or most sensitive. The best poets are those who find the best words and put them in the best possible order. You students will get your chance to be poets. Words to know. There are 3 words that we're going to discuss today, and you're going to write down definitions in your notebooks. Open up your notebook. I want you to find the first empty page in your notebook on the writing side. And please do not just go into the middle of your notebook and start writing. No, go to your writing side and flip to the first empty page, which would be right here, and write today's date, which is March 8th. March 8th, and we're going to talk about these 3 words. First word, diction. What is diction? Woo. Diction is the selection and arrangement of words in a literary piece of writing. The words you choose to use. Everybody has choices with their words, and diction is that choice that you are choosing. Here, everything in yellow in my slides today should be written into your notebook, and you'll show me before the end of the day. There are 4 general types of diction. First is the formal type of diction, and formal is used in scholarly or lofty writing. So when you are writing a paper for a teacher, you're going to be writing it very formally. You won't use slang words. You'll use complete sentences. You don't want to put like IDK or LOL in formal writing. Informal is used in a relaxed but educated conversation. You might have a little bit more of a relaxed tendency, but it's still somewhat formal. The next one is colloquial, is what's used in everyday speech. So as we talk, it's going to be even more informal than when we're writing things down or talking with teachers. And then slang, of course, is the last, containing newly coined words and other terms not accepted in formal usage. Slang words come and go all the time. There's going to be new slang words that come into your vocabulary every year. Choice of words. So your diction is simply your choice of words. There's no single correct diction in the English language. Instead, you choose different words or phrases for different contexts. You're going to be talking to a friend a lot different than when the way you talk to a child. Usually with a child, you'll maybe simplify your words, you'll talk slower. And then when talking to a principal, here's an example of how to change your choice of words when talking to different people. When you're talking about a mistake that you've made, maybe to a friend, you'll say, oh yeah, I screwed up. But to a child, you might say, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. When you talk to the principal, that same mistake might be an accident, because you want to give your best face forward. And an employer or a boss of something, you might say, oh, that was an oversight. I promise I won't do it again. So think about the way you talk to different people and how it changes depending on who you're talking to. Diction is that choice of words. The next 2 words are synonym and antonym. Synonym and antonym are words you're going to hear again throughout the rest of your life. Somebody's going to ask you, oh, what's a synonym for this? You'll want to know what that means. First of all, a synonym is a word having the same or nearly the same meaning as another word. So if you are going to say, oh, that person was cool, you could also maybe say, oh, that person's popular, or that person is likable. They're all synonyms. Cool, popular, likable. They would be similar words to describe a person. Whereas an antonym is the word opposite in meaning to another word. So if you said, oh, that person's cool, you wouldn't say, oh, you mean she's a dork? No. Cool and dork are antonyms you would not use to describe the same person. I'd like you to make sure that these definitions are written in your notebooks. Next, The Worst Day Ever poem. This is a great poem. Go ahead and read through it and then follow directions. After you're done reading through it, you can click on this link here to watch the video of somebody else reading through it and watching how they chose to portray this particular poem. When you are finished reading it and watching the video, answer these questions. What was confusing and why? Why was it confusing? And number 2, can you relate to this poem? How does something about this poem relate to something in everyday life, either through you or someone you know, or where have you seen something like this before? Some of you might have even read the poem before. Now it's your turn to try it out yourself. Create your own reverse poem and pay attention to your word choice. What kind of mood do you want to convey? We're talking about diction here, your word choice and how you say your words, who you're talking to as the audience. Are you going to use a more formal or a more colloquial way of talking to your audience with your poem? Next, create a title that makes sense. Sometimes, like I've mentioned before, you might want to wait until the end of this whole thing until your title pops out. Your title shouldn't necessarily define what your poem is, but your poem would define your title. Next, try to use a synonym for boring somewhere in your poem. So what could be a synonym or a word very similar to boring that you could use in your poem? And then make sure your poem makes complete sense both ways. And fill out your exit ticket. When you, if you don't finish your poem today, that's okay. We'll have more time to work on it in the future. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and let me know. If you need paper, if you don't have your notebook and you need to have a piece of paper so that tomorrow you can tape it into your notebook, just raise your hand and I will get you some paper. Please do not ask another student for paper. I will take care of it and handle it. If you have any questions, let me know and good luck.